guys, it's Cassandra with Coaching Conversations. Today we're going to talk about what are some creative ways that you do to introduce new topics and concepts. I have a couple. Hopefully you enjoy. Let me just say you could do so much more when you have built relationships. Building relationships and trust is crucial, especially for new teachers or veteran teachers. They want to make sure that they are not embarrassed in public. So you have to make sure you build safety within your PD. Whether you are really thinking about having other teachers share their experiences with a certain concept or idea, but it is crucial that you allow for people to talk, allow for people to speak, and then give them that space to be vulnerable. Always, I try to kind of highlight and celebrate our teachers. So maybe I will ask them, hey, can I show a clip of this? And I try to make sure I allow for teachers to teach a concept, teachers to teach an idea, or to show a clip of them doing the thing that my PD is on. So consider that when you're working with your teachers. And we're always making connections. So whether this is something that you're doing as a PD, make sure that's something that they can take right away and implement it into their class. That really helps them implement new strategies, try new procedures, because they've done the thing. You show this idea or concept, they've practiced it with you, and then you're saying, okay, let's go. I want you to try it. And so when you're walking classrooms, that's the thing that you want to see. Now, I encourage you to leverage AI to help you with anything that you're doing, from emails to presentations, really thinking about how do we integrate AI, because if they see you doing it, they're more likely to ask, how did you do it? And so try to show some of the tools that you've used in presentations, and then it helps to give some type of hands-on experience on how to use the tool. So I've done a virtual tasting sessions before. Now, it wasn't actually tasting things, but I did do like, taste this candy bar. 1, are you allergic to peanuts? 2, taste this candy bar. Can you guess the candy bar? And then I had a lot of volunteers, right? Something to get teachers engaged. One of the things I also did was like, stick your hand in this and feel, and who can tell me what this is? And then I would give this brief scenario on what it could be, and I would kind of throw them off. And I love how teachers are laughing, they're engaged, they're making jokes, and it really helps with PD. Now, if you are a new coach at a school, I highly encourage you to model and demonstrate often. Many times coaches, they're kind of viewed as the stand-apart type of person. And you want to make sure that you can demonstrate some of your key skills, some of the things that you're great at. And they get to see kind of you in action often. So not only you're demonstrating live sessions, but you're also demonstrating when you're in classes, you're modeling some of the things that you want to see. I try to record some sessions. So I recorded many sessions and kind of gave it out to teachers to see, like, try this, or let me show you what this looks like. And that has been very helpful for my teachers too. And then I've also used it as a way to debrief. Like, I've kind of recorded a teacher's classroom, and then the teachers are looking at their own class. I'm like, what do you think? What are your thoughts? And they're debriefing on their own lesson. That has been very powerful as well. And so thinking about the time to allow instructional coaches as well as teachers to reflect in the moment, and as well as we're always facilitating the reflection through guided questions. I don't have to tell you the power of storytelling. Storytelling is so powerful. If you can lean in and start with a scenario or a story or an example, and give like case study examples, thinking of how are you telling stories and how does it relate to our current context? And think of really creative, interactive scenarios that you can like put maybe a teacher in. Now, granted, you have done all the front loading before they've done it, but thinking about what does role play look like in the moment. One of the teachers, we were looking at this poem, and I had the teacher actually read the poem and act it out, and boy, did the teachers laugh. They loved it. They pat the person on the back for putting themselves out there and trying. And it was really fun to kind of see teachers, engage in the conversation on the context, engage in the body movements and why you did this or what made you use this, this movement over that. So it was really an engaging way to really talk about how I'm, as a coach, am able to use role playing in the classroom, but really thinking about what are we doing to connect what we're doing to current practices and current research in the field. Now, I am so big on peer collaboration. How are we reflecting on our current practice? How are we talking with our peers? So I make sure there's some type of engagement. If you're going to get the teachers together, they need to talk in some type of capacity, right? That's the power of community, is conversation. So what are we looking at? Our observation, maybe we're doing classroom walks to other teachers, and they love that as well. Maybe we're having powerful discussions about maybe a clip that I've shown. What are our insights and what are our things that we think about with this teacher. And always when I'm showing teachers to get feedback, it's always another teacher from another district, so we can all kind of give our collective ideas on what's happening. Another thing is like implementing. How are we implementing? How are we refining our strategies? And what does the outcome look like? Being able to, measure our outcomes with our goals, trying to figure out that. And then, of course, working with teachers to create plans, but also thinking about how can they co-create lesson plans again. Now, if you are doing some type of micro-learning, which you should be, you should think about how can we do micro-learning, bits of learning for teachers in different scenarios. Now, granted, you're not going to do this when you first start as a new coach, but I encourage you. Let me say that again. I strongly encourage you, if you're going to do micro-learning, and if you're going to start the thing, be ready to finish it. Don't start a newsletter, a coaching newsletter, and then, the third month you're kind of out of it, or you just decided not to do it. But always think of how can we get our teachers learning, integrating new tools, and of course it takes bite-sized learning, right? We're competing with TikTok and social media, right? And the average seconds of people watching media. So always keep that in mind when we're doing learning, whether you're researching a tool, doing a highlight of a tool, or just thinking about how this new tool how does BrainPop work with Canvas? Or how do we use CN networks to have students create forums in Canvas, right? Whether it's using a tool, whether it's collaborating with the curriculum, thinking of what are we doing, what are we seeing, and then how are we providing micro learning so we can kind of engage the teacher in, hey, I like that video, I tried it, and I need more help on it, right? So that kind of gets teachers coming to you to kind of see, hey, I need to learn more about that. I always consider just-in-time resources, always thinking about what videos can you provide based on what you're seeing in the school, how meetings are accessible to all, right? You are pre-planning, preparing, you're setting the agenda weeks before, you're asking questions, teachers are answering the questions or providing feedback on the PD prior to the PD. So always be intentional. One of my mentors that I love so much, he would always say, know your intentions and choose congruent behavior, right? If you know you're going to do this micro-learning newsletter, you would plan in advance. So you would have maybe 3 or 4 newsletters ready to go, or thinking about how do I drop these off that's asynchronous and automated to where they're all going to go out, right? And so being prepared and being able to plan is crucial. And then thinking about what are your visual learning tools, the resources, how complex are you in explaining it, maybe the formats that you use, are you consistent over time, because we want to make sure that teachers, if we know the newsletter's coming, we know the format's coming, we become trained to know it's coming out the second Friday of each month. And that's just the expectation. And so once you set that expectation, just be consistent. I don't know if you know me, but I'm all about that technology integration, right? What does it look like? So we always get the new shiny object, new shiny tool. And sometimes the new shiny object and tool doesn't really relate or connect with our systems perfectly. So we're always either giving grades here and logging out, logging in, or we're trying to hodgepodge put this curriculum grade in with this new LMS, with this, new tool that we just got. And so really thinking about how do the tool integrate. I remember I was working with New School. They were like, yay, we bought this new curriculum. I'm like, that's great. How do we upload it? And they were like, well, it doesn't come with a feature and it doesn't work with Canvas. Okay. And so what else is it missing, right? Well, it also doesn't have a bilingual feature. Okay. What else is it? And it has Common Core standards. It doesn't really have Indiana standards. So thinking of all these components and all these things that either somebody is going to do the work, either it's the coaches are going to do the work, or is it going to be the teachers going to do the work? Somebody has to do the work of figuring out what is the best way to integrate this tool, whether it's the IT people, the coaches, the teachers, and just being strategic, like how much are we going to put on our teachers? So when we think about technology and integration, I always love the flipped learning, right? The pre-recorded videos, the digital reading materials, interactive pre-assessments to see what they know before you just go dive deep into the concepts. Thinking about what are our digital collaboration spaces. We did a PD, I want to say about 2 months ago, where we had them work on an assignment, but they were working digitally together, collaborating together. And so we were able to get a copy. They were able to save a copy for themselves. And so this kind of helped them understand that sometimes collaboration happens, human to human, but sometimes it can happen on a wiki data page, right? Or a wiki space. And so what that looks like can be as powerful as what it looks like in the real world, right? And so really thinking about how are we incorporating like discussion forums, what is our resource repositories? I want to talk a little bit about that. I love when students put in research repositories, right? And you're thinking like, okay, Cassandra, my students cannot. Yes, they can put in research. One of the things I did with one of the classes I co-taught with a teacher is we were working on this concept. I can't remember the concept, but it was like solid, liquid, or gas or whatever. And so we were explaining the concept, and then we told the students to do the activity. And so we gave the students a learning space. And so one of the things I told the teacher is sometimes we are not clear or explicit with things, and sometimes we can allow our students to navigate where we feel that kind of we didn't explain well. And so one of the students put a mini video on how to upload their assignment with solid, liquid, and gas. And that was powerful, not only for the teacher, but for us together, learning that sometimes this collaborative learning space is for the students, but it's also for the teachers to get feedback on what they could do better next time, or where the gaps or the holes were, where they need to be more clear and explicit, right? Giving students the freedom. Okay, and talking about virtual office hours, we don't do this enough. I think because we have access to technology, we would give students access, but sometimes we would give like parents access to our virtual office hours. Now, I'm not saying you have to always be on it, but if you had a time or twice a month where you hosted virtual hours, but you were letting your teachers or your families or somebody know that you're there to answer questions, or, just play and try to see if that's a thing. It could be a thing, and then you realize that's not a thing. But I think testing those ideas out have been amazing. All right, and last but not least, interactive assessments, right? Digital polls to see, did they know the concept? Exit tickets, of course. Interactive quizzes can be so much fun, as well as like concept maps to actually map. I've even seen drawing where students were drawing the idea of what we just read and how it relates to their prior knowledge. So really thinking about how do we integrate technology, but also use our digital tools to our advantage. Now, I'm all about that research, really looking at how do we implement this and what do we need to do, right? So I would pick one phase, something that you want to try eventually, right? And present a new topic and pick a medium. How are you going to present it? Maybe it's through storytelling. Maybe they're putting something. Maybe they're doing a collaborative jam board. Maybe they're doing a Padlet, right? Thinking of how we can build safety. I remember I was teaching at the university, and one of the things that I did to build safety to make sure that everybody felt okay was we would always have the class and then the after class. If they had any questions, comments, I always left time after the class. And so we got to a space where we were so so in sync that students would ask me those weird, awkward questions in front of each other. And the other student was like, I have that same question. What do you do with a student that, And so when we are working through these ideas, when I realized that our class was so cohesive, so supportive, then I threw this idea to where we had random things that will happen in your K-12 classroom. And so I would bring my daughter up, and she would ask the teachers random things, and they would have to respond how they would respond to a student, because she was a student, she was young. And oh my God, on my feedback and my evaluations, that was the thing they loved the most. The fact that they had so much psychological safety in their narratives, and that I was okay with allowing them to have that conversation, just weird conversations with my daughter, because our students, they just love that. So really thinking about, we used a lot of storytelling, and we worked really hard to build safety in all of our classes to where everybody felt safe. There was no more after the class. It was always during class. We felt safe enough to ask you any question that came to mind. Make sure you have an exploration phase. What are your hands-on activities? What are your experiences that they're going to have? How are you modeling the behavior you want to see? So thinking about tech tasting, right? What does that look like? And maybe you're utilizing a specific tool within the medium. And so that is helpful, because our teachers have over 50 tools on their dashboard with tech, and then they're like, when am I going to get to learn? What is the learning curve that needs to happen, and how am I going to learn this and then learn the integration? It's a lot. So thinking about what does this look like, and then of course the implementation phase, and continuously supporting them as they're going through these approaches. And then it's the, hey, did what I think I did, is it happening? Or did they kind of back off and be like, I'm not going to use that, right? So I used I did a 3-day workshop to a school on AI, and I was thinking, okay, how are they going to use this? Okay, emails, that's the low filter. We're going to use AI for emails. We're going to use AI probably for lesson planning. And of course, maybe some type of visual tool or presentation or something in that capacity, or visualizing data for parents, right? And so I'm like, okay, let me think of these things. How can I organize it? What is the immediate need? And then how do I make sure I deliver this? And many times teachers will come and be like, hey, I did the thing with AI and it worked really well. Or I tried this tool, it didn't really work. And then that's the conversation starter. All right, so I always leave you with things to do, your key steps and next takeaway. Whatever you're going to do, start, you need to sustain it, right? Don't do something and then back off and be like, I didn't feel like doing it. Try to finish it for the entire year. Remember, that is going to be your legacy, right? If you do newsletters, that's going to be your thing. Collaborate for learning. I'm always big on, if you brought me in a room, clearly I am using my expertise to talk to other people. So don't have me sit in a space of people where I'm not talking. So always think, you're meeting, you're collaborating, you're talking. Thinking about technology integration, it's not only how do I use the tool, but it's also how does this tool connect with the tool that I have to use to grade? How do I maybe implement one piece of the tool, since we're all using it, just to practice the tool to see how it works in my classroom? And then, of course, building that freedom to be able to have conversations, like genuine conversations about what's happening in classroom. Maybe sometimes when your leader, the principal is there, you may not be able to have that. But truly, if you are going to have that psychological safety in your space, then you can go so much further than you could if you do not have it. So make sure you build trust and that safety with your team. I hope these tips help. That was great for coaching conversations. If you want to know more, DM me, coach. I'll talk to you later. Bye.